we would have to go in as police officers and tell them that your son or your daughter is a homosexual. What would this do to your mother or father? Think about it.
Is the classroom a closet?
No one tried to see that you are very much a girl.
No respect.
My father is a Republican and he is a Christian, and he still loves me. He loves me.
Is gay bashing part of the school curriculum?
Did you tell him that a lot of the rights he takes for granted are pretty much denied to us?
How did lesbian and gay students fight City Hall?
Homophobia doesn't just affect gay and lesbian people, but affects all people.
Who's teaching lesbian and gay students to be themselves? Major funding for the question of equality is provided by the Corporation for Public Broadcasting. Additional funding is provided by these and additional funders. A complete list is available from ITVS, the independent television service.
I used to put on shows for my parents all the time. And they weren't really shows. They were more like musical extravaganzas. And this is what I'd do. I'd go into my mother's closet and I'd put on a wig, I'd put on a little skirt, a pair of her shoes, I'd wrap a sheet around me, and then I'd turn on the music. And I would stand in front of my parents and I would just dance back and forth and back and forth. And this was basically their reaction over the years. When I was age 5, that's very good, sweetheart. You are very talented. Age 8, okay. All right. Age 10. Age 12. Jesus Christ, something's wrong with him. And it was about this time that my parents started to buy me sports equipment. Lots of it.
He knew that the healthiest life for him was to have plenty of exercise and fresh air. He liked football, and the coach was a hero who could do no wrong. Bob tried to be as much like him as he could. His interests were mainly masculine, and his success at sports made him sure of himself.
Hey Joey, how's everything back in LA? I'm having a great time in New York. I told some of my friends here all about you and my other friends back in LA. They say they'd like to meet you sometime. Yesterday they took me to a place called the Harvey Milk School. It's a way cool high school for gay and lesbian kids that was started back in '85. The kids there seem pretty happy. It reminded me of the Eagle Center back in LA. A teacher named Jerry Batty set it up because he felt that too many gay and lesbian kids were dropping out of school. Anyway, in July of '93, Jerry opened the doors to LA's first gay and lesbian high school. And the rest, as they say, is history.
KFI AM 640, more stimulating talk radio. The Stephanie Miller Show, right up until 9 o'clock this evening and every Monday through Friday, 7 p.m. to 9 p.m. Thanks for tuning in. And we have some kids from Eagles, which are all gay kids. It's a gay It's a gay. Explain what it is again, Christine.
It's a school for gay teens where continuation, you could go there, finish your studies, get your high school diploma.
And it's mostly kids that are being harassed too much in regular schools to learn, right?
Yes.
EAGLES is an acronym that stands for Emphasizing Adolescent Gay Lesbian Education Services. What we are trying to do here is to target at-risk gay, lesbian, bisexual, and transgender youth. These are the youth for whom regular comprehensive high schools have not really been sufficient in meeting their needs.
In the public schools, I pretty much remained anonymous. I just didn't really talk to anybody or have many friends or anything.
I was scared to death to tell anyone. I was scared to death if anyone found out. So I just tried to cover it up and play along as best as I could.
Many of our youth are truly at risk of suicide, of dropping out, of developing a lot of absentee patterns.
I wouldn't really dress normally as like a male should back then, and I would get ridiculed every day and stuff thrown at me.
I've had to fend for myself. I've gotten into a fight with 2 boys. I'm a very small girl, and so I had to basically fend for myself.
What we are here to do is to help these youth to obtain a diploma in the most positive, safe, free haven that they can experience in Los Angeles.
Like at my other school that I went to in my junior high, I couldn't really do my work because I was like so busy. I was so scared of. I'd be scared if I was late for class to walk into the classroom. Whereas here it's like no big deal. It's like, oh, there's Matt, But at like a regular school, it'd be like, oh my God, that's the faggot Matt.
We're here as role models for the students to show them that they can be somebody in life. They don't have to settle for low self-esteem, for being doormats to anybody. They can become something and be proud of themselves, and we're here to boost that self-esteem.
There may be some here today that will be homosexual in the future. There are a lot of kids here. There may be some girls that'll turn lesbian. We don't know. But it's serious. Don't kid yourselves about it. It can happen to anybody. We've seen it happen in all phases of society, from the lowest to the highest. Nobody's exempt. 85% of the homosexuals, you cannot tell that they're homosexual. They look like I do, like any man does. They're masculine in appearance. You'd never know. They can be anywhere. They can be policemen. They can be school teachers. They can be ministers. They can be judges, lawyers. We ought to know we've arrested all of them.
At my junior high school, the security guard even called me a faggot once. And the teachers didn't do anything. I told my teacher and they didn't do shit. They didn't do anything. They don't really care, but when it's another minority, if it's someone who's black or, Jewish or Hispanic or something, they'll do something about it, but they just don't care.
For me, I'd walk into a class, maybe a little late. I'd walk in and just, people would stare at me. I'd walk through the hallways, they would be, I'd be walking, everybody would be quiet. As soon as I had my back towards them, they, little rumors here and there, people would start screaming things out.
There was an incident at my school where we were playing Truth or Dare. That was when the Madonna movie came out, and we were playing that, and we dared 2 lesbians to kiss, and some other people saw, and they came over, and all these people came over and started chanting to us saying that we have AIDS and we're all fags and dykes and everything and all that, and they were harassing us totally. They were there was a huge circle around all of us, and they were pushing into us, yelling at us.
And then finally just school was out of the question, and I just became really involved in drugs and stuff. So school wasn't a question ever again. My option was drugs and alcohol. To take away that pain, because I didn't have school, and I always wanted my education too.
I had a strange reputation for fighting for some reason. But the only time I ever fought was when someone would get into my face. I never caused any problems because I'm not a problem causer.
I just felt really bad within myself for having to lie all the time, you know, whenever my friends would go out somewhere and they'd ask me to come along and bring a date, you know, I couldn't bring my boyfriend along with me, you know, or the guy that I liked. I would have to lie and go with a girl or something, and, you know, it would just be a lie on top of another lie.
I had a lot of problems because the guys wouldn't leave me alone, and they kept saying I'd make you straight and stuff, and the girls would get like, don't get around me.
They would get what?
Don't get around me or don't touch me, and I'm just like, don't flatter yourself.
So my grades suffered greatly for that. I would go from 3.5 to 1.6 over one semester period. And, you know, suicide was a constant idea in my mind.
I've thought about it. I've been in a car in the garage with the key in the ignition, waiting to start it and just fall asleep, but I've never turned that key. It's the closest I've ever come.
If the public schools is going to have an EAGLE program, LA Unified School District, is going to have a program in terms of the EAGLE program, taking kids who say they're homosexual, why don't we also have a program that would offer what we call reparative therapy to help correct the gender identity conflict, which is all homosexuality is. It's where the gender is blurred.
I don't think so. I don't have any problems with my homosexuality.
Well,
I'm very, very happy with my...
Reverend, I think that's highly offensive to many, many homosexual people. They don't feel they need reparative therapy.
It isn't offensive to hundreds of homosexuals who have been delivered. There's a major movement out there, and it'd be good for you to...
They were only brainwashed, that's all.
We're going down to Orange County to support a gay and lesbian club at Fountain Valley High School that many of the students and parents want removed from the school. And we just feel that the club should be allowed to stay at the school. And perhaps if there was a club like that at my school, I would not have dropped out when I did.
Science can't find a reason for homosexuality, and yet you are allowing and encouraging it for our children.
I would like to ask you, what if everybody was homosexual? There would be no future. They cannot reproduce if you're strictly homosexual.
Being gay is about love. We simply want to be able to love and be loved. And so what if the object of our love is a member of the same sex?
When I stopped burning in this lie and began turning to the truth of my sexuality, eventually I met someone named Raoul and I fell in love. It was one of the most amazing things I've ever felt in my life. And I'm not going to stop loving him no matter who tells me to.
Having a group supporting a behavior of which 82% make up all AIDS cases, supporting a behavior which is against the law and causes a high rate of suicide is not for the well-being of students. We students are determined to hold our moral standards forever, with no compromise or tolerance. Because tolerance without morals is chaos.
I don't hate those that are against us. I know they were sincere, but as one person said, there's nothing more dangerous in all the world than sincere ignorance and conscientious stupidity. And so people need to be more critical in the future. Not just have a good heart, but have a strong mind too.
If you study the entire gay movement in terms of its literature and its music and all that's printed in The Advocate and the other gay national magazines...
Hey, let's not get into the Village people here. I love the Village people.
You will find that the whole thing is built around sex.
You know what? The person in this room with me right now is my girlfriend. And we do not base our life on sex. In this moment in time right now, we're sitting here and we are conversing with you and we are not fornicating as well.
Of course, you're in a radio studio. I don't expect
we can't have any of that here in the studio.
Not in a radio studio.
Yeah.
We go and walk down the street
That's
and
what
we're
you
not
make us
all
sound
over
like.
each other.
Okay, kids. Oh, do we have a referee's whistle? All right, we got to take a break here.
We're like separating ourselves from everyone else, which is I believe it's kind of wrong, but I mean, what I think is like, why should we have to do that to get an education? It's not fair, you know? But on the other hand, I mean, what else can we do?
You know, there's sometimes when segregation is important, like why you want to segregate yourself from a lion's pit. You know, and I think of regular schools as sort of like a lion's pit.
I feel like, I feel like a minority. I do. I am a minority. But, I just feel like I'm a small part of life that's not accepted, so they just throw us in a corner and say, here, go to this school. And we're lucky to have this school. But it'd be really nice just to go to school, and everybody said they're going, yeah, you're cool, you're gay. But it's not happening.
The alternative is a kid who gets discouraged, gets teased, shunned, that type of thing. They drop out, and where do they get? 10th grade. Christina wants to stay here, and she is going to graduate, and that's great. More power to her.
Safer doesn't mean I wasn't physically hurt in school because I could defend myself. I'm not, but it's just mentally it's safer. Yeah. You don't have to deal with all the comments all the time. You don't have to deal with that kind of crap. It's just easier to do your work.
If I want to turn in a book report with a gay theme, well, here's a place where I can, do it. Other school the teacher would probably look at it and, what's this?
When she came here, she was interested in the subjects and the way they taught and the way they have like a placement to place people and different things, and she was really enthused about it.
Take Mr. Batty, for example. Here we have a man who is breaking his back for us, for gay and lesbian youth, and trying to make a difference, giving us a chance that we never had in school. He has so much caring and so little time, and, he has a big load to carry. I guess you would call him a role model. Maybe not everybody would look at him like that, but if they really stop and look what he's doing, I guess you can look at him as a role model.
In talking to Chris's friends and in getting to meet them and understanding both at the Eagle Center and outside of the Eagle Center, I can't help but feel that acceptance and love is more important for a gay child than perhaps someone else, because the life and the difficulties they're going to face in this society.
This is serious. You can imagine what it would mean to your mother and father. We would have to go in as police officers and tell them that your son or your daughter is a homosexual. What would this do to your mother or father? Think about it. And if we catch you involved with a homosexual, your parents are going to know about it first. So keep that well in mind, and you will be caught. Don't think you won't be caught, because this is one thing you cannot get away with. This is one thing that if you don't get caught by us, you'll be caught by yourself, and the rest of your life will be a living hell.
I don't understand how people can say that we are doing something wrong. We are bad students for promoting sex. In my school, I do my work every single day. I'm graduating early at 17 years old and a senior. How am I doing something that is wrong? I go to school with a bunch of kids who have had to live on the streets and who have had to sell their bodies because they have nowhere to live. Because of parents like these people who sit there and say that these kids are bad. That is not right. My father is a Republican and he is a Christian, and he still loves me. He loves me. And I really don't think that just because I am a lesbian means anything. If this equal alliance is denied, we're just going to let our children live in ignorance and die in ignorance. And that is very pathetic, I see. Thank you very much.
I came to a realization why she didn't want to dress the way I thought she should dress, why she wasn't seeing the type of guys I thought she should be seeing, and why she had more girlfriends. And her girlfriends I like too. I can understand. She had mentioned to me once, how do you feel about guys? Would you like to be with a guy? Would you like to walk down the beach with a guy? And I said, I've never thought of guys in that way. And she says, I haven't either. That kind of hit home. I said, I can identify with that.
Chris, as with so many children, had not been open with me for a long time as he went through this discovery and understanding of who he was. And I know it's made all the difference in our relationship for him to be honest as to who he is and for me to be accepting of that. So attending the Eagle Center is kind of a continuation of that openness and that acceptance.
It's kind of like a family environment there. We all get along with each other. I think we all seem to get along because we're all in the same boat, you know, we're all going through the same thing.
It helped me realize that there were other gay and lesbians my age, and I didn't know that there were so many kids out there like me, you know, because there were times I would sit down and just wonder, you know, are there other kids out there who are gay, you know? And I knew there were, but I just didn't know that there were so many, you know, who shared the same feelings that I did and who went through the same.
I've already been invited to 3 different cities to talk about the possibilities of starting similar programs. You know, there are so many children out there who are already understanding their sexual orientation, or certainly beginning to get inklings of it. I'm getting calls from different parts of the city even saying, I've got a 12-year-old who needs a program like yours. We can't start, honestly, soon enough for some of these kids.
He seems like he understands anything, and he does too, and he really takes his time out, and he shows us that he really cares for us. Here's a man that's here doing something for me someday so I could be what I want to be. Then I'll be able to be out there helping other people. And, you know, it really makes me feel happy to have a teacher like that. And I really thank God for that. I'm hoping someday to become a pilot.
Pilot?
Yeah, and fly airplanes all day long, every single day of my life.
So I'm walking down the street and I see this Wonder Dyke walking towards me from the other direction. I mean, she was so beautiful. She had a short fro, kind of like mine, only more styling, and eyes like Venus. Not the painting, the real goddess. So I start hyperventilating and I try to think of some sort of suave thing to say to her. Wait, maybe she's no dyke. Cars start honking, so I keep walking and get out of the intersection. She's still walking towards me, and I spot a triangle. Thank Jesus. The sun is reflecting off her teeth, and I want to pluck at her earlobes. She smiles. God, I think I'm going to die right here in the middle of Belmont Avenue. Can't you see the headline? Woman dead by Dyke Beauty. Okay, here she comes. Okay, I gotta start a conversation. I gotta say something. Okay, I got it. Hey.
Hi, sis. I can't believe how great Mom and Dad are sometimes. You know the new girlfriend I have that I'm crazy about? Well, last night Mom and Dad invited her over for dinner. They were so cool. She'd love them. God, I'm lucky to have them as parents. I mean, I could have dumb parents like the mother of this girl I was reading about, who put her daughter, Lynn Duff, in a mental institution in 1991. She was only 15 years old, and was put there just because she told her mom she was a lesbian. So she was sent from her home state of California, where she would have at least had a right to a hearing, to a hospital in Utah where she had no rights at all. The hospital was for teens with sexual problems? I mean, give me a break. Eventually she ran away and hasn't talked to her mother since. What Lynn needs is to be supported by other gay and lesbian kids. I visited a friend in Albuquerque, New Mexico not long ago, who took me to a youth group called Under 21. A lot of the kids there had supportive families, but some didn't. I was really glad to see that all of them were there for each other.
I know, I could never bring myself to be attracted to anybody of the opposite sex. I could never even fake it. All my friends would ask me who I liked, but you know. And I couldn't fake it. I'd just say nobody. And they wouldn't believe me, but I really couldn't lie to myself that much. I was lying to I wasn't admitting to myself, but I couldn't lie that much.
I know the first time I ever kissed a boy, it was totally natural. Didn't feel squeamish. I didn't feel like I had committed some unpardonable sin or something.
Yeah.
Just like, hey, I just kissed a boy, cool.
Well, I was dating this guy from my high school, and he was kind of a serious relationship, you know, call each other on the phone all the time, all that stuff, and we just made out in my driveway for 3 hours after we went out on a date one night. And it was just the most awing experience because I was such a zone case.
It was like a revelation, you know. I mean, it just felt so right. For the first time, you know, I knew exactly. And after that moment, I was comfortable with myself. Once I kissed the first guy for the first time. I mean, everything was good. Everything was fine. You know, you were okay.
It's like you learn in health education and from your parents and everybody how a man and a woman have sex. No big deal. But there was nothing, I had never heard anything about how like 2 women have sex, 2 men have sex. I was totally terrified.
The sex had something to get used to. Or, you know, that's something you still have to deal with because it is different. You know, you're taught to do one thing or, you know one thing.
That's what scared me the most was I didn't know anything. Even about, well, gosh, what if I kiss her the wrong way, you know? You know, it's really simple with a man and a woman, but you don't learn jack about anything else.
I know all about heterosexual sex because that's on HBO. I learned all about that on television.
Gave us a distorted view.
But gay sex I learned about from my partners, or it was just experimentation.
I think communication is more important than sex. There's got to be communication first, I think. It's important. Of course it's important in every relationship. But it's not very, very important.
You have to know the person before you have the sex, and you have to love them and all that. And so that's what it was, you know, it was love. And then we had sex, and it was great.
I usually take it slow, and then if there's anything there, then I'll like let them know that I'm very leery about having sex. And usually then they're like, oh, well, never mind.
We can love, we can care, and it's not just sex, sex, sex. You know, we're sexual beings. That's a fact. You know, heterosexuals have sex just as much, if not more, than homosexuals, you know. But that's not what's portrayed on TV, that's not what's portrayed on the news, that's not what's portrayed on the radio.
If God created sex and sex feels good, then why are you not supposed to do it? If it feels good, why would you know, if you're not supposed to do it, why does it feel so good?
2 people are looking for sex, you know, and it's the attraction is there and they're both consenting or agreeing, then I personally don't think there's anything wrong with it.
It might become addicting and destructive, but up until that point, if that's what they're wanting, you know, I don't have the power to tell them no.
As long as you're safe with what you're doing, and you're not hurting anybody, including yourself, do what you want. But for me, personally, I'm 18 years old. I want to get through nursing, I want to have a husband, I want to have kids and settle down. Next year, if I could. I have never had a one-night stand, and I don't plan to have a one-night stand, especially with AIDS going on right now.
Choice, left far behind at a crossroads. He couldn't have cared less. You like me. You really like me. He sang inside as he died inside. And out. He didn't think. Wouldn't control himself. He gave me AIDS! Ba-dum-bump, ba-dum-bump. Ba-dum-bump, ba-dum-bump. No more sex! No more fucking sex! Yes, sirree, I now have me, cemeterially. A shortened lifespan, a spoon-fed agenda. Catch as catch can the ancient wolves who ate the lamb. Sing of my own private water slide to oblivion. In mixes of reason, in conduits of passing hours and lives. And ruination of the coming. At set dimensions of glass mingled with fire. Fiber optic glass and machine gun fire. And they sing, Sever! I said sever! Your ever moribunda black Trista in the wailing sky! To ever drone in its liquor.
If a person goes looking out for sex, I would hope that they would take a condom with them. But if you happen to, like, maybe you go to the bar, you do meet someone, I doubt, unless they carry one in their pocket or something, that's the only time I would think they practice safe sex. But people don't like ruining the moment. You're like, you're getting hot and heavy, and then all of a sudden say, stop, let's pull out the condom. A lot of people, unfortunately, don't do that. I won't do that. One of my best friends, when he told me that they had unsafe sex, and I drilled him. I was like, God, that is so dumb. And afterwards, he was like, I know. And so the next time he was like, all I could think about was you drilling me, so I kept a condom with me.
To me, it makes sense that we have that sexual side to us come up when we come out, because I spent about 18 years suppressing my sexual self and not doing anything sexual that I enjoy, you know.
To an extent, it satisfies what you need right then. And sometimes that's a lot more important than the long run, you know. At the time, it keeps you stable.
Like a fix.
Yeah, it is. It's like a fix, exactly. It gives you an emotional fix because it gives you like an intimacy.
I think at first it's always sex for a gay person. And I'm gonna be honest, it was for me, for her, because I wasn't with anybody and she wasn't with anybody for a long time. And yeah, that's what I wanted, but I also fell in love with her character and a person, and that she was more mature than I was, and just to help me grow up with her.
A lot of times it stops at that sex level because, I mean, marriage isn't sort of an option for a lot of people. It's not even an option, so it's like, well, I guess we just have to have sex.
Is that hard to like have any kind of goal in your relationship?
That's what I mean.
Yeah, it's like
I don't know.
it's hard to strive for anything because you can only go that far.
It goes back to us not having positive role models when we were growing up. You know, all we see is the gay bashing on television, in the paper, in movies. That's all we see, and we never really see any positive relationships or role models.
What Jimmy didn't know was that Ralph was sick, a sickness that was not visible like smallpox, but no less dangerous and contagious, a sickness of the mind. You see, Ralph was a homosexual, a person who demands an intimate relationship with members of their own sex. One never knows when the homosexual is about. He may appear normal, and it may be too late when you discover he is mentally ill.
Like the really hard part is when you first start dating, because that's like when you're not very comfortable with each other yet, you know, and it's like you need to be someplace public. Because I know when I first started seeing Michael that we got bashed a couple of times. Like the second date we went on, we went to an ice cream shop and we were sitting outside eating our ice cream, and this car drives by, fags, and I was like, oh.
Well, actually, I can think of one time we were just driving, you know, we were in our car, and there was this truck that they looked really, really scary, and they looked like they were gay bashers. So we even stopped holding hands, because we usually hold hands while we're driving. And we stopped holding.
I slowed down the car quite a bit, make sure not to get right next to him.
I think it's hard to hold hands in the mall and stuff like you said. I want to be able to do that with who I'm with my lover or whatever. You know, I want to be able to express myself in a way that heterosexual teens express themselves. I don't think it's fair.
I just want to live my life openly and not have to
hide or
not to be scared. You know, where can we be safe to hold hands? Where can we give each other a kiss? That's one thing I want.
Do you think you'll ever reach that point?
I think so.
Wet and green like a monsoon, tongues like muddy rivers swollen, we kissed and drew back, taking in deep lips that were parted, wet and not getting dry. Fat girl, I want your everything, crescendoed so that I could barely hear the scatting that danced flamenco on the girl of me. Or my hated fear, thanking that no one tried to see that you are very much a girl. And so, it is so easy passion is, I thought, as I stood facing. Facing, I stood looking at you, and over, and up at, and smiling, and looking at you, and smiling hard from the sudden realization.
Trying to fight not being gay is worse than anything I can think of. It's the worst self-torture.
Remember that it took you a long time to make the decision to come out, so when you're dealing with your parents, give them a little latitude to say, okay, it's going to take me a little time to adjust to this. Don't just right away think, well, they're either going to be accepting or they're not going to be accepting. You have to give them the same amount of time that you gave yourself.
Worry about your education. Don't worry about your sex life. That can wait till you're 20.
You're a human being. You're the same as everybody. You just have a different sexual preference, and that's all that's different about you. You have red blood, and you'll always have red blood. You're a person. Don't let anybody make you feel any less than they are. Don't let them make you feel any less.
Fire in my brain! Agony! Agony! Torture! Torment! I can't stand it!
How's it going, Julie? It was really nice to talk to you on the phone last night. Sorry to hear about your argument with the straight guy who said gay and lesbian kids don't need laws to protect them in public schools. Some people are total jerks. Did you tell him that a lot of the rights he takes for granted are pretty much denied to us? I mean, something as simple as going to your high school prom is, like, totally impossible for gay kids. My mom was telling me about this guy named Aaron Frick who sued his Cumberland, Rhode Island high school in '79 because they wouldn't allow him to take his boyfriend to the prom.
Why did you feel you had to go to the prom? Did you want to make a statement?
I felt that, one, that I did have the right to do it, and two, yeah, it was a political statement. I really think it was a strong political statement.
You know, things haven't changed much between '79 and now, but I have a little hope that they will, because my mom also told me about a bunch of kids in Massachusetts who got together and actually changed a student rights law. Now, gay and lesbian kids throughout the entire state are protected against discrimination in public schools.
House Bill 3353 is an amendment to an existing student rights law in Massachusetts.
It's a law that prohibits discrimination in public schools on the basis of sexual orientation.
It was a bill that in fact added sexual orientation to the docket of race, creed, religious background, and made sure that no matter who you are, that your rights would be protected as a student.
This bill is fighting for equality. It's not, being safe in schools is not a special privilege, it's a right.
That's a mean-looking thing. It's kind of red. Tell us about that.
Well, it was a student in the high school, punched me. I think it was on account of his prejudice, actually, because he just couldn't accept my homosexuality, and he gave me a sucker punch.
Can you explain his behavior? I realize you're not a psychiatrist, but why do you think he did that?
Well, basically, many high school kids don't really know other gay people, and they're just going to want to, hit the first fag that comes along. And they do, because the teachers aren't there to, support us or protect us when we need it.
Bills written on paper initially aren't going to affect straight youth, or straight youth have to interact and see these gay kids in their school and have to deal with them and talk to them and realize that they are people.
The goal of this entire law is to just make a public education accessible to all students. And that includes straight students who are perceived to be gay, anyone who's harassed because of their sexual orientation or because of what people think their orientation is in effect being robbed of their public education.
It's not in any way promoting kids or anyone to identify themselves in a certain way. It's simply trying to make schools safe for people that do identify themselves as gay or lesbian or bisexual.
It empowers teachers, first of all, to talk about gay and lesbian issues in class, to say that, this person or that person a poet or a writer was gay. It allows students to bring same-sex partners to the prom. It just allows them to be out and open and feeling good about themselves and knowing that they're protected and that they feel safe.
Being able to have the law behind you and say, I need to be able to have my right to a public education now, hopefully it would enable, at least it would reduce the dropout rate and enable more students to finish high school. And the suicide rate too, hopefully. Hearing all sorts of stories about people being kicked out of school and being harassed and having to leave school, having to drop out through no fault of their own just because the environment was too uncomfortable for them, it really kind of made me realize it was a reality check that said something really needs to be done here.
When I was first questioning my sexuality, I went to my guidance counselor talking to her about the mixed feelings I had for my girlfriend and my best friend who was, a guy. And without asking her to do anything, she took it upon herself to notify my parents and express her concerns about the fact that I might be gay. And if House Bill 3353 had been in effect, I don't think that would have happened. She wouldn't have had the authority to do that. I freaked out, and it was the last time I went to school. My very last day was the end of my junior year.
I wasn't one of the kids that were like teased or necessarily beat on or talked about. I was just invisible. I wasn't living up to my potential. I was just quiet, so I thought silence would basically save me. No one would know I was gay if I didn't talk at all. So that's what happened. So I didn't talk. I didn't do anything. I wasn't really an achiever.
I really started to break away from everything. It really started to make me think about what was really going on with me, and it really started my whole coming out and coming to terms with me being gay. As time went on and I became really vocal in the community in Boston, I spoke at Gay Pride '92 and ended up having my picture in the newspaper, unknown to me. Well, my mother saw it, and so did everybody she worked with. My parents couldn't deal with it. They couldn't deal with the fact that this wasn't a family secret, that this is a very public thing. They didn't understand what was going on. I had no idea how to explain it, how to help them understand. And what ended up happening, there was this huge fight at home.
I went downstairs and the door was locked, and I knocked at the door and I told them, if you don't open the door, I call the cops on you. And I did. I came upstairs and I called the cops. And at that day, they came over and they took him out of the house.
The police officer judged me for being gay, said that if his son were gay, he'd be living on the streets. He took my keys and he made me leave.
But it was just because at that time I was just going through too much stress. And but I really regret it today. And I'm very sorry I did that. I should never have done it.
I turned to my friends, asking them to help me, my straight friends growing up, asking them to help me, and they said no, because they were afraid of being guilty by association. And I called the Department of Social Services, where it is I thought that you were supposed to go when you got kicked out of your house or you ran away or whatever, and they told me that they didn't have any services for me because I was gay. So I was homeless for a couple of weeks until I was able to get my own apartment and get back on my feet. And when I found out about the bill, I had absolutely nothing to lose, and saw it as a chance to do something for other kids like me growing up who might be going through the same thing.
My family initially were very distant from this. They kind of didn't want to hear what I was doing, and they didn't want to be involved in the activism part, because I don't think they were at a point they were ready to deal with me being so open about my sexuality.
I think a lot of people who really don't want to look very far into it about why this issue is so important to me or anyone have a tendency to write people off, or write me off as a dyke. But again, those people aren't really my close friends, and it's sort of their problem if they have a problem with me standing up for what I believe in, because I do believe in this so strongly.
I think sometimes my parents were a little worried about what kind of backlash might come from my being so visible, but they've taped all my news broadcasts, and they've been generally very supportive. The students should not have to worry about safety in schools. That's not our job. Our job is to learn, and it is the job of all educators to make sure that school is a place where we can learn.
I'd like to start by reading you something that I wrote in my diary when I was a 14-year-old freshman.
I know that being gay is not something you choose. It just happens. I don't want to be a lesbian, though. It would be so hard. I can't really do anything about it now, but if anyone knew, it would be awful. I know kids my age would never accept this kind of thing. If anyone ever reads this, I'll die.
A close friend of mine, she's 15 years old, was beaten up last week because she came out to the wrong person. Her chiropractor said that she was hurt more seriously than people coming out of a serious car accident.
As a member of the gay community and as an out gay man, I could not go to Lexington High. Lexington High and many high schools across this state are known to be not safe for gay and lesbian teenagers.
Passage of this bill was really unique in that it was actually filed by, written by, filed by, and testified and lobbied by all youth, and that we actually empowered ourselves to make this happen. It also brought out a lot of students, not just gay and lesbian students, to work together and realizing that homophobia doesn't just affect gay and lesbian people, but affects all people.
I made phone calls, I lobbied senators, I was a team leader in the lobbying effort. That meant I just led a group of people to see 1 or 2 senators. I held vigils outside the State House every Monday afternoon.
When students heard about it and realized how important it was and they rallied around it, I think it made a lot of people take off that indifference and look and see, what was going on and what the students wanted. I think it was a surprise. This was a youth movement, It wasn't adults, it wasn't adult politicians, it was youth saying this is what we want, this is what we need.
I did have some doubts about the bill being passed just because, well, even though there were so many people in favor of it and so many people doing so much to support it and promote it, there were a lot of people who were opposed to it.
The arguments were the classic, they want special rights, it's not fair, or we don't want gay children in our schools, or we don't have gay students in our schools, I think was a very common one. People just said, oh, we don't have that problem. We don't need to protect our gay students because they're simply not here, which of course is part of what contributes to the whole situation.
You'd be surprised a lot of the gay youth who oppose this bill. I have a great deal of friends who were gay and said, well, this is ridiculous, but this is not going to change anything. It's kind of a waste of time, so why even bother, It's part of growing up. I think that shows a lot of this internalized homophobia that a lot of these kids are dealing with.
I think that the adult gay and lesbian community has been afraid to take on youth issues because of all the stereotypes and misconceptions that have been set for the gay community by the mainstream up until now. The whole myth that gay people are pedophiles. People are trying to break away from that. They were also trying to break away from the youth because they didn't want to be tagged on with those stereotypes and wanted to get things accomplished, but unfortunately forgot about where it came from and where this movement really came from, and it comes from growing up gay, growing up and feeling isolated, alone and confused.
When it comes to Governor Weld's reaction to this bill, I think at first, he didn't want to touch it. But I think when he saw the youth involvement and saw what this bill would mean, that he had to. I mean, this bill was the right thing to do. So when you're faced with the right thing to do, sometimes your only choice is to do it.
Gay rights bill was signed by the governor this morning.
Oh my gosh, I didn't know. It means a lot. It means that we're not going to have to spend all our afternoons at the State House anymore.
Gay rights advocates say Governor Weld, more than any other governor in the country, is on the cutting edge of this issue. Yet when he signed the bill this morning, he did so in the privacy of his office. This is not an issue that conservatives within his own party care to publicize.
Well, it would mean that if it would not be appropriate for a school to deny admission to a gay student because of sexual orientation, or to deny a gay or lesbian student permission to participate on a sports team or to take an arts class. Very hard to argue with, in my opinion.
I like to see this bill affect issues around health. I think it's important that we can't have a sex education program without homosexuality being discussed. You're talking about safe sex, and you're not going to talk about, anal sex, oral sex is ridiculous because you're not ensuring the youth's health. So I think this bill will make it a little bit easier for teachers to discuss these issues accurately and appropriately. So that's what I hope this bill is going to do.
I think this is incredibly amazing. A group of youth in the Boston area, just right here, have changed the law, essentially. They have stood up for what they believe in, and there have been major legal, tangible changes made because of that. To me, that is so exciting, and I have major hope for what will happen in the future because of that.
Kids will realize that this is the way things should be, and they'll go on to fight to make it more equal in the outside world, out of school. I think it's like kind of like lighting the flame, really just start the real big fire, which is going to hit, hopefully, the rest of society. So I think that's the start. I think that's what this is going to do.
I'd at least like to see a world where gay and lesbian students could just go through high school just being students and not having to worry about their identity as gay or lesbian all the time, and not having to explain themselves to their friends, to their teachers, or to be faced with things that they couldn't identify with all the time. You know, I'd like to see math word problems with same-sex couples in them. And it wouldn't be much, but it's amazing how much a little pronoun can do.
We're free. We're queer as can be. Oh, we're young. We're free. We're queer as can be. Oh, we're young.
When I was a young child, my parents bought me a new winter hat, and it was purple with a very large red pom-pom on top. And I would wear this hat to school every day very proudly. But the other children would pull at the red pom-pom until they got the hat off my head, and they'd toss it around to each other trying to keep it away from me. And I'd walk home and I'd apologize to my hat. And this happened so often that eventually I stopped wearing my hat to school. And one day my mother said to me, "Why aren't you wearing your hat? It's cold outside." So I put it on, but I put it on inside out, so I had this big lump on top of my head. And my mother said, "Stop acting so silly. Why are you acting so silly?" And I broke down crying, and I ran into her arms, and I told her. And after she had assured herself that I had done all the proper things to stop the harassment, she said to me simply, "Come to the sewing room." And she took me down to her sewing room, and she handed me a handful of straight pins, and she instructed me to stick them through the pom-pom in all different directions. I couldn't wait to go to school the next day. And when I did, every kid that took a swipe at my red pom-pom got a handful of pins. They never touched my hat again.
Major funding for the question of equality was provided by the Corporation for Public Broadcasting. Additional funding is provided by these and additional funders. A complete list is available from ITVS, the independent television service.